What is up, YouTube? It is Grayman47. I'm here with another video, so welcome back to my channel. Hey, this one we're going to do a quick one today, a quick how to clean a pistol. And this video is basically geared towards the novice or new owner. And if you're interested in just how to do a quick field strip and clean your pistol to make sure it's functioning properly, hang with me on this one and let's do it. Alright, the first thing you want to do whenever you are cleaning a pistol or any gun for that matter is making sure that you are safe. So keeping gun safety even when you are cleaning is super important. So one of the things that I like to do is, and that everybody should do when cleaning a gun, is obviously making sure that the gun itself is safe and clear. So as you can see, there's no ammunition in the magazine and no ammunition in the gun itself. So making sure that gun is clear, whether it means double and triple checking that pistol, make sure that it is clear before you begin the cleaning process. All right. The next thing that you should do when cleaning a pistol is make sure that there is no ammunition in the vicinity of the gun. So basically what I always say is make sure there's no ammunition in the room, in the same room that you're cleaning the gun. That way you can not accidentally or inadvertently load the pistol. If there is no ammunition even in that room, you are securing yourself and making sure that this cleaning is actually safe. All right, so those two things are at the top of the list. One additional thing that I like to do when cleaning a gun is making sure that I am totally focused on cleaning the pistol. I'm not watching TV when I'm cleaning the gun. I'm not listening to, the radio or anything like that. I'm strictly focused on cleaning my gun. So that way you don't do something by accident, you don't inadvertently do things that you shouldn't do. Just make sure that you are focused on cleaning that gun. So if you do those three things, you are guaranteeing yourself safety when it comes to cleaning your firearm. All right, y'all, so the gun that I'm going to use for this demonstration, for this particular video, is going to be a Glock 17 Gen 5. And the reason I'm going to use a Glock is because Glocks are so widely available. So many people own Glocks. So I'm going to use that as my demonstration pistol for this cleaning video. However, keep in mind that some of your other guns are obviously going to differ just a little bit in different kinds of ways. One of the things that if you have a different gun outside of the Glock, where it may be different is it may not require you to do certain things to disassemble the Glock or to disassemble the gun. One of the very few things that I do not like about Glock pistols is that you are required to pull the trigger in order to disassemble this gun. So therefore, you definitely even more so need to make sure that this gun is clear before you disassemble it for cleaning. All right. So if you have another gun, make sure you read the manual on how to disassemble it and how to clean it. But for the most part, once we have this taken apart, most of the other processes or procedures in terms of cleaning a gun is going to be about the same. All right. So let's take this gun apart. Alright, so before we take this pistol apart, one of the things we're going to do, like I said earlier, is we're going to make sure we double and triple check to make sure it is unloaded. Nothing in the magazine, nothing in the pistol, so it is completely ready to go. Alright, so the first thing we have to do to disassemble a Glock is we have to pull the trigger. So that's why it's so important that we make sure that the gun is clear before we pull that trigger. And we just make sure that the gun is pointed in a safe direction before we pull the trigger. So once the trigger is pulled, the next step is using your dominant hand. You're going to put your thumb pretty much right underneath that back strap, and with your other four fingers, just wrap it around the slide and pull back slightly. All right, and then once you pull back a little bit, the two levers, the takedown levers that are on the side of the Glock, you're just going to use your non-dominant hand and pull those down and slowly release the slide, and it will just kind of come off once you've done that. So now you have your frame and your slide, which includes the barrel and recoil spring. So I'm just going to take this recoil spring out. Be careful with that. Make sure it doesn't pop out, maybe hit you in the face or fly across the room. And then I'm also going to take out the barrel. When I'm cleaning my guns, I kind of do them in somewhat of an order just because it's easier and works better. So I typically will start out by cleaning the slide first. And then once I clean the slide, I'll go with the barrel. And then I'll also go with the the recoil spring and then the frame. All right, so I'm going to start off with the slide. And so when you look at the slide, you'll see for the most part, most of the outer surfaces of the slide, whether it's inside the interior, that's where you'll see some of the buildup. You'll see some of the gunpowder residue on the rails, as well as inside here where the firing pin is, so on and so forth. So if you are cleaning this gun for the first time in like a long time and you've put quite a few rounds through it, it might require a little bit more elbow grease than if you've recently cleaned the gun and then maybe you've only put, you know, maybe 100 or 200 rounds through it. I typically like to clean my guns each time that I visit the range. So I'm usually cleaning it after my visit to the range. Sometimes I might go 2 times to the range with that gun before cleaning it. Just depends on how many rounds I put through it. One of the ways that you can clean the buildup in here is with a brush. Some people will use just a simple toothbrush that has plastic bristles that allows you to just kind of get in the grooves and kind of scrape some of the residue away. There are also brushes out there that look like toothbrushes but have like a copper bristle like this brush here that's used to clean the barrel out that we'll get to a little bit later. And some people actually use this as a way to clean the inside of their slide. The first thing you want to do is you want to use some of your cleaning solution. Here I have the Impro 7 gun cleaner, which I use and have been using for years. I would squirt some of that inside of the slide. Not a whole lot, you don't need to soak it down. Just squirt some of it inside. And I usually will take one of these cotton swabs or cotton patches used for gun cleaning, and I usually will get inside of the slide with this patch, which just will allow me to clean some of that buildup along with the cleaner that I sprayed inside. I try to get along the rails, inside the rails as well, and also where the firing pin is in here, and you'll just get some of that out of there. Again, I clean my guns pretty often once I visit the range, so I don't have a lot of heavy buildup where I need to get a brush of any sort and really get into the areas, because like I said, I keep it pretty clean. These patches can be bought at your local gun dealer or some of the big box stores. Even Walmart sells them in their firearm and camping sections. And they're usually relatively cheap, maybe a few dollars for a couple hundred squares. Or like I did, you can take an old t-shirt and just cut the squares yourself if you have an old t-shirt laying around. So once I get in there and I get all of the areas and surfaces clean up to my satisfaction, and there really isn't much more coming off of the gun onto the patches, I usually toss that patch to the side and I'm good to go with the slide. Next up is the barrel. The barrel can have some buildup inside, especially if you don't clean it very often. It will get buildup inside and kind of gunk up the threads and just kind of maybe impact or affect your accuracy. So it's important that you clean that barrel out. What I typically do is I take some of my gun solution and I squirt it inside. Again, you don't need a whole bunch, just some, enough to maybe dampen and lubricate it. And then I take my 9mm, because this is a 9mm, I take my 9mm brush that's attached to my extension rod, and I push from the feed ramp down through, and then I just bring it back. And I just do that a few times, and it will clean out the inside of your barrel. And a lot of times I'll use that brush to maybe just kind of go along the feed ramp and outside here, outside of the entrance of the barrel, and just make sure I get any buildup that might be there. But like I said, I don't typically have a lot of hard buildup there inside of my barrel because I keep them clean. The next thing I do is I take a patch also, and I put some cleaner on the patch. And I also change out the extender rod, and I put this little piece on here, which allows you to, kind of looks like a needle, where you can thread a patch right through here. Let me get a good side there. And pull it through. And you got to pull it where it's kind of snug but not too tight. And then I'm going to put a little bit more of the cleaner solution on. And once you have that on, I usually run this patch through just like I ran the brush through as well. And you can see this patch starting to get really dirty as it pulls out, you know, that residue. And I make sure I run it along the feed ramp as well to get that also. And so I usually will run maybe 2 or 3, maybe even 4 depending on the gun. Run about 4 patches through here until there's nothing else coming off on the patch and the patch is virtually coming out clean. And then I typically would go around those edges like we did with the brush as well as the feed ramp. All right, so now that the barrel is nice and clean as well. Next up is the recoil spring. The recoil spring typically isn't extremely dirty, but it does require some cleaning just to keep it functioning at top level. So what I typically do with that is I typically just get a patch, and then I put some of the cleaner on that patch, and then I just go over the recoil spring, and it kind of pulls off any debris or any buildup that might be on the recoil spring. And like I said, they typically don't get super dirty, so you don't have to do a lot of work when cleaning the recoil spring. All right, so once I feel that that's nice and clean, I'm ready to move on to the slide. And then if you look at the slide, you'll notice that there are a lot of different parts inside the slide. The ones that I'm really focusing on the most on this type of quick field strip clean are the ones that make contact with the slide. So that's going to be up in here, around here, and toward the back. And I do get down inside here as well, you know, just to make sure I get all of those parts clean as well. So I'm going to take another patch and put some cleaner on this patch, and then I'm just going to kind of go inside the slide, or I'm sorry, inside the frame, get all those areas, like I said, that make contact with the slide so that it cycles properly. And I'm just going to clean all of that out. And as you can see, it's starting to come off on my patch. I even get down in here, make sure all of that is cleaned out. Now there is a level of cleaning where you can take all of this stuff from the internal part of the frame out and clean all of those things individually as well. I may do another video on that at another time, but this one is just a field strip quick clean. And this is what you normally need to do on a regular basis when you go back to the range. I probably do a thorough clean of all of my parts maybe once a year or twice a year, depending on how much I shoot that firearm. All right, so once those are all nice and clean, well, if you feel like it needs some extra elbow grease, you can get a brush, toothbrush, or a copper wire brush, or use this brush and just kind of get down inside if you really need to. Again, I don't think this one needs that, but if you needed to, you could. One other thing I do is I typically take a cleaning patch and I go inside of the mag well, up inside of the frame, because there is some buildup in here as well. All right, so once those things are all clean, you are ready to start to lubricate the firearm or the parts of the firearm before you put it back together. So let's take a look at how I lubricate my parts. All right, when it comes to lubrication, I typically do it in order as well. I usually will start with the slide again, simply because once I lubricate the slide, I just set it down, then I lubricate the barrel and slide it right in, and then I lubricate the recoil spring and I can slide that on, and it all just kind of works well in that order. And then I just put the two parts remaining together once I lubricate the frame. So for lubricating the slide, I usually will take my oil or lubrication and I will put just like 1 drop right there at the top of the slide. And I usually will use my pinky finger. You can use a Q-tip or even a patch and just kind of get all up in there and spread that oil drop around. And I'll even go inside here and inside here when I can, and just make sure I get a little bit of oil everywhere on both sides as well as the top. And then I usually will take the lubrication and put a drop or so up in this area, in the rear of the slide, just to make sure these areas are covered and protected. And I typically will take, for those areas, since they're a little bit smaller, I'll take a patch and put a little lubrication on the patch. And then I'll just kind of rub those areas out and evenly spread out the oil. All right. And maybe get in here with the patch a little bit. And you don't need your gun to be dripping wet with oil, but you do want it lubricated. So you got to find that happy balance. All right. Finding the balance is key. All right. Then the last thing that I typically do with my slide when lubricating it is I take my the nose of my oil bottle and I just kind of go right down the rail, the slide rail itself, because I want to make sure that these slide rails are lubricated. And I put some oil right down this slide rail. Not too much. Again, you don't need it dripping, but you do need some on there so that once the areas of the frame actually touch and meet, they are lubricated. And then I usually will just kind of hit right here on this underside of the slide where the rails are as well, because this area also meets a large portion of the frame. And then usually I'll just take my pinky and just kind of go up and down that, make sure it's evenly distributed, and then the slide is all ready to go. All right, so next up is lubricating the barrel. So with the barrel, typically what I do is I'll take another patch and then I'll just kind of put it on my extension rod. And then I'll add some lubricant to this patch. And I put a decent amount. I mean, again, I don't want it soaking, but I do put a decent amount on the patch so that it is leaving oil as it passes through the barrel. So I'll put some on here, get it ready. And then as you can see, it's, there's a decent amount on there, but it's not soaking wet. So now I'm gonna give it several passes through the barrel just to get it nice and lubed. And again, as I pull it back through, I'm gonna bring it down on the feed ramp. So this lubricates it, but it also takes off any additional buildup that you might have there as well. So any extra gunpowder that might be left over, you might see that come off on your patch as well. All right, and so after I pass through there, I can see through here, and I don't know if the camera will pick that up, but this barrel is nice and shiny, nice and clean, and ready to go and protected. All right, so then I might take the patch and just kind of go along this area again, feed ramp, make sure it's nice and lubed. All right, and then the last thing I do to lubricate the barrel is I might put a couple little drops or strips of oil on the outside of that barrel, and you use my pinky finger and just kind of go around and evenly distribute that on as well. That way, as the slide kind of operates and goes back and forth on your barrel, it's lubricated and it does that easily. And I also will usually get up in this area and on both sides just a little bit and rub that in, feed ramp, and now it's ready to go. All right, so that's my barrel all nice and lubed, and then I'll just slide it back in the slide, and that way it's ready to go. Next, in order to lube the recoil spring, I usually will just kind of put a little bit of oil on here like that. Not very much at all. It looks like I'm putting a lot, but I'm really not squeezing hard and there's not much coming out, but there is a little bit. And I also take that patch again that has oil on it and just kind of rub that in and evenly distribute that on the recoil spring, just so that it's nice and oiled as well. And it will extend the life of the recoil spring. And so that's the recoil spring, nice and shiny and lubricated. So I'm going to insert that back in the slide. The last thing to oil is going to be the frame. All right, so in oiling the frame, All I'm going to do again is I'm going to take a look at it just the same way I actually cleaned it. I'm going to mostly focus on those areas that make contact with the slide. So I'm going to take my lubricating oil and I'm just going to maybe go across here a little bit, put just a little bit of oil there, a little bit here, a little bit here, because these are areas that are going to connect to the slide itself. So you definitely want to make sure that they're lubricated. And again, not over lubricated. Keep in mind that you did lubricate the slide itself, so you're not going to need a ton of lubrication on the frame. All right, so I'm just going to hit there. And sometimes I even put just a little drop right in there as well. And then I use my pinky finger and just kind of get around in there. And all of these, again, you can use a, sometimes I use a Q-tip, or they make Q-tips, they're Q-tip-like. They make, things that are like Q-tips, but they're a little bit longer, specifically for gun cleaning, that you can get into spots that are tough to get into and things like that. If you want to invest in those kinds of things, they do sell those things as well. But I usually just use my, like I said, my pinky finger, as well as some of the patches that I have, and I put some oil on them. So I use the patch and maybe get down in here a little bit with some oil. And again, the patch may bring up some of the additional debris that you didn't get in the initial cleaning stage. So you might have to watch that as well. All right, so there you have it. Once you have the frame nice and oiled or lubricated, you just take your slide, and with a Glock, once you put the slide on top of the frame, all you do is pull it back, the trigger gets activated again, and now that slide is ready to go. It is back on the frame and your gun is back together. And the next thing that I typically do is I'll take a Hoppe's rag or a silicone rag, and I will use it just to kind of wipe off the exterior of the slide, just to keep that slide nice and clean, because the slide does have some gunpowder buildup from shooting, as well as oil from the cleaning. So you want to get that excess oil off of the exterior of the slide as well. So I'll use a cleaning cloth for that and just kind of go over it pretty good. And now you can see that that's nice and clean. You can see the barrel is still lubricated. And generally that's how I'll check. If I haven't shot a gun for a long time, I will check to see if it's still lubricated or if it's dried out. And I'll just kind of look at the barrel and see how much lubrication is still on the barrel, as well as the recoil spring, and then I'll usually look at this part of the slide. If those areas look dry, then I usually will take the slide off and then further inspect it. And then if I need to add some oil to it, I will. And that's again, if I haven't shot the gun in a while and it's just been sitting. So I will inspect that from time to time. All right, y'all, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And if you've never cleaned a pistol before, I hope this was helpful. You know, it's very important that you keep your guns ready to operate in tip-top shape and condition. So make sure you keep them clean. If you like this content, do me a favor and like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. Smash that subscribe button. And like I always say, if you ain't packing, you're slacking. I'll see you when I see you.